Empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men. Power Black men. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Shatter the stereotypes. Power Black men to live extraordinary lives.
Welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. This show is based on the simple idea that every Black man is capable of creating inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. Therefore, we provide insights and strategies to educate, motivate, and inspire Black men to reach their full potential and create the life of their dreams. So if you're ready for some high-octane motivation and inspiration that supports and empowers you to live the life you were born to live, get ready to shatter the stereotypes so you can build a life that lights you up and positively impacts the world. So now, let's shatter the stereotypes with your host, Coach Michael Taylor.
Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where my intention is to empower Black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of Black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models in mainstream media. So my intention is to showcase and highlight Black men who are doing remarkable things in the world. You see, contrary to mainstream media, it is my belief that Black men are actually thriving and experiencing unprecedented levels of success in the world today. And my goal is to showcase and highlight Black men who are blazing new trails in all segments of society. Now, let me be clear. I'm well aware of the challenges we face, and I definitely don't deny they exist. Of course they do. But it is my belief that every Black man has the capacity to create an extraordinary life. And the only thing that can keep them from doing so is themselves. And with that being said, one of the most perplexing paradoxes I see regarding Black men is that we excel at sports and epitomize physical fitness, and yet we lead the nation in most health-related illnesses and death. It amazes me that the group of men who exemplify the perfection of the human body collectively do not take very good care of their bodies. This is an issue which needs to be addressed. So I've brought in Dr. Greg Hall to share some insights and tips to help Black men take better care of their physical health. So without further ado, here's Dr. Greg Hall. Hello, Greg. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic, man. Super excited to have you on the show. I really enjoy being on your podcast. And again, I think this is a really important topic that we really need to discuss. So we're just going to kind of break it all down. But before we do, I just want to start off with a few icebreakers. So first of all, tell us where you're from.
Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised, and still here now.
All righty. And tell us about your immediate family, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Oh, well, I'm the youngest of five. And obviously that, I come from a parent, my mother and father, we moved to Cleveland from Virginia in the 50s and, raised a family. My father was a dentist in the inner city of Cleveland. And so we did fairly well for us, you know what I'm saying, right? And that's sort of where the doctor kind of gene got me. And so then I became a physician. And then my wife and I have three sons. And my actually oldest son is going off to medical school next week. So we're going to have three generations of Black doctors, which I'm really, really proud of because there's not enough of that. So like for all you were saying earlier about, Black men thriving, like my father was a doctor. I'm a doctor. All of my father's brothers and sisters went to college, and those things are not, it's like people ask me, you the first person to graduate? No, everyone in my last generation went to college. Are you the first doctor? No, there's probably 6 doctors in the Hall family. I had an uncle that was a doctor, and a cousin that was a pediatrician. So, and all Black men, right? And they were all doing like what you said, and not a lot of talk about that on the news and out in the neighborhood, right?
Exactly. And that's why I have this platform, because we need to see people like yourself, men like yourself, because again, it still amazes me how people are shocked when they see Black doctors and Black astrophysicists, and oh, I didn't know, it just amazes me that we still in 2024 are even having that conversation. But I love what Tyler Perry said when he said, "Stop fighting for room at the table. Build your own table." And that's what Shatter the Stereotypes is about. It's about building our table so that we can serve who we really are. So again, I'm really glad to have you on the show. Now I'd like you to share a woman who has shaped you into the man that you are today. Name a woman.
Well, I mean, and that's a difficult one because between my mother and my wife, my mother certainly shaped me. I'm in my early 60s, and so when you say where I am today, I spent 21 years with my mother, and she passed when I was 21, so it was literally just 21 years, and I'm coming up on 30 years with my wife. And I would certainly say that my wife, she had a decade longer, right, with me. But I think she shaped me into who I am the most today. I mean, obviously the foundations were with what my mother did, you know what I mean? But my wife has definitely, sharpened my focus, and she's done a lot to make me who I am. We argued a lot too. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy loving process. You know what I mean? But
Sure.
it was it's been a good process. You know what I'm saying? And it's been and I'm proud to give her credit, but I didn't want to leave my mother out because she really did say all the foundations of me being a good person, being the person that I am, but then the personality that I am, and my focus and the things that I try to do has been shaped, I think, more so by my wife.
Nice. Now, name a man who's had a positive impact on your life.
That's for sure my father. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I wanted to be a doctor from a very young age because he was a doctor, and so he showed me how to be courteous to everyone. You speak to everyone. I mean, the things that I do today are 100% from my father. He said you can't watch anyone work. So if I have a big yard, I have a landscaper. If the landscaper comes over, I have to go in the house, or I have to go and help him. And the landscaper looks at me like I'm crazy. He's like, what can I do to help? You know what I mean? He says, you pay me. That's what helps. But no, but my father said, you can't sit and watch anybody work. You know what I mean? You have to help them or get out the way. And so
Gotcha.
that's just, speaking to whoever, there's no one below you. All these messages I pass on to my three sons are all been very critically important.
Got it. So let's switch gears just a bit, and we're going to do some sentence completions.
Mm.
So complete this sentence. I really love to
See patients. I really love meeting people and listening to them, and see patients. I mean, some people drag into work. I really don't. I really like meeting new people, finding out their perspectives. I learned so much from my patients, and the goodness of people, their perspectives on things. So that's it.
my superpower is
I think my superpower is connecting with people, to be honest with you. I can convince people, and I don't really want to overly advertise, but I can usually convince people of almost anything. You know what I'm saying? Just give me a little bit of time, and I can tell you, and part of that is earning their trust. You earn someone's trust first, and then once you earn your trust, then the person's not going to tell you anything wrong, and I'm not going to tell anybody anything wrong. Not on purpose, at least, right?
Sure.
And I think once you do that, people they'll jump on board.
Gotcha. Now, last one. The future is
Future is shaky right now. I think there's a lot of things that have been in place that have put, I think about African American men, for example, and then African Americans in general. There's a lot of things that have put us in a precarious situation as a community, in terms of when I look at, education that people are getting, younger people, and how much they're learning in school, and how much investment they're putting into schools, and those young parents, what do they know about parenting and things of that nature. And so I think we're going to lose some ground over the next so many years. They're still taking our rights away from the government standpoint, and there are people still voting for those people who are taking our rights away. And so I think we're going to have to hit I don't know, rock bottom's not a good word, but I think we got some shaky times coming ahead, and I'm sure that's gonna then allow us to bloom into something that's gonna be better.
All right. So I wrote a book titled The Cure for Onlyness, a Black Man's Guide to Joy, Passion, and Purpose. And in the book, I talked about the unique challenges that we as Black men have when we're in environments as the only people of color.
Mm.
I'm certain you've had that experience. So I'm curious, how do you navigate, or how did you navigate those situations early on in your life?
Well, I mean, you have to try to find an ally, even amongst you being the only Black person. There's hell, there's usually a Jewish person in there that may be the only Jewish person. When I was in high school, I mean, it seemed like the Jewish people were kind of aligned. You know what I'm saying, right? The next minority, right? I think everything is not necessarily black and white. There's some very nice, friendly, white people that love Black people, that love people. You know what I mean? I think there's more like it, and they're not discriminatory. And I think you seek out those people, and because it's always, you don't want to go through life alone. I think you always do better in business, in education, in all those things when you have allies. And I think when people mess themselves up when they go to the job and say, I'm going to do this alone, or I'm going to do this, because you come in late, there's nobody to cover for you. If you're calling sick, there's no one to, so you need people. And I think we frequently find ourselves as the only Black person, and then we isolate ourselves, and that becomes a problem at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I want to give you an opportunity to introduce Dr. Greg Hall to the audience. So tell us what you do, tell us your specialty, give us your elevator pitch of the doctor that you are.
Well, I'm an internal medicine doctor, which means I see patients age 18 and over. My oldest patient's like 108.
Wow.
My patient who lived to be 110, and she died a few years ago. I work at University Hospital's Cutler Center for Men, and so I'm the medical director of that center, and we specialize in men's health and helping men to live longer. And it's a revolutionary new approach to men's health, really concentrating on prevention, finding things early, connecting, and so it's we have a minority men's aspect of it that's kind of set out to really target black men in the suburbs and in the city, and then wider disparities as it relates to just men. Men don't live as long as women. Men have a very high suicide rate. We've got a high risk-taking rate. We have one of the highest rates of death at our workplace. And so these are all things that at the Cutler Center at University Hospitals in Cleveland that we're really concentrating on trying to improve, all men's health.
Nice. So let's talk about your journey to become a doctor. Okay, so I want you to kind of think about maybe high school, or actually, let me ask you this question. When did you decide that you wanted to be a doctor?
I think I decided in elementary school, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah. It was, like I said, it was after my father. So I'm sure it was third grade, second grade, third grade, or something like that. That I wanted to do it, and it's not too early. In junior high school, when you decide that you don't want to take geometry, or or you're not going to take pre-calc or something, you're making a decision that's going to impact your career already in college, right? Because when you take algebra, geometry, and then algebra 2, they call it, or whatever, and then you take calculus, that sets the groundwork for you to do that again in college. And so I think making those decisions, so taking those harder courses, working hard in junior high and high school allowed me to perform better in college, which allowed me to get into medical school, and then all those things match. So it's really not too early to decide, something like that. I mean, there's, as you know, there was a famous doctor in Cleveland who was a mechanic who went to medical school in his 40s. And I know him very well. He's an ER doctor right now because he always wanted to be a doctor. And so there's never a too late I had another medical student who was my age, in his 50s at the time when I met him in medical school, because he always wanted to be a doctor. So it's not too late to become a doctor at any age, but it's certainly not too early for people who have kids that they think have promise, or just you want the best for them and you want them to become a doctor, or at least think about those things. It's never too early to think about, what things they should do, and then try to seek out people who can mentor them that are actually Black doctors.
Yeah, yeah. It's listening to that still small voice within you from an early age. And I think if we have the parents that are supportive enough to allow us to follow that, fortunately, you were blessed with parents that allowed you to do that. So that's actually wonderful. I love to hear that. Now, so let's talk about Black men in health. And I mentioned at the beginning that Black men lead the nation in most health-related illnesses and death. And I based that on a report that I read. And I'm curious, from your perspective as a doctor, is that accurate?
Is what aspect is
that Black men lead the nation in most health-related illnesses and death?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. It was such an obvious question. I had to hear it twice. Well, it's true with an asterisk. Okay, so like in Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, it's absolutely true. So across the United States, Alaskan Natives and Native Americans, men, have the shortest life expectancy. Okay. Right? Well, people of Native American, Indians and Alaskan natives have the lowest. Men have the absolute lowest life expectancy. So, but there are no Alaskans in Northeast Ohio, right? So, and probably very few in Houston and Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. And so in most major cities where probably most of your listeners are, African-American men have the lowest life expectancy, right? So to be specifically. So when I talk in Northeast Ohio, I say we African-American men, and we do have the lowest life expectancy, and that's related to cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke, kidney problems, and it's also related to cancer. And all those things can be treated, and our life expectancy can be extended.
Yeah, and again, that's why this conversation is so important, because we're going to talk about some of the challenges. And first of all, let me say, I'm an optimist. That's the lens through which I see the world. And I recognize all the challenges. But one of the things that I noticed, because my primary work is with men, not from a physical standpoint, but from a psychological and emotional standpoint, getting men to really change their mindsets about what it means to be a man, right? And so I know how difficult it can be for men, especially Black men, to even have conversations about health, which I think this should be something we should do openly and regularly. So we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we have. And I want to start off with why I became interested in my health. And this is a great story, because when I was 18, I got my first real job, right? And so I was very responsible, getting up at work, being on time and all of that. Well, I wasn't ready to give up my partying yet. So I would stay up to 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and end up going to work at 7, that kind of stuff. Well, one day I came to work and I was working at this lumber yard, and I was putting some lumber in this rack. And all of a sudden, it felt as if, you remember the movie Rambo, that big knife Rambo had?
Yeah, right.
Imagine being stabbed in the chest with that Rambo knife. That's what it felt like.
Right.
And it was so painful that I literally blacked out. I fell on the ground. Of course, they called the ambulance and everything. So the ambulance comes, picks me up, takes me to the hospital. I get to the hospital, and the doctor says, "Well, what's going on?" I said, "I don't know. You're the doctor. You tell me."
Right.
And I said, "Did I have a heart attack?" He said, "No, you didn't have a heart attack. Nothing wrong with your heart," because he had me hooked up with the EKGs or whatever. And so he kept prying. And finally, I told him, I hadn't been sleeping a lot or whatever. And he said, "Oh, okay." So basically what happened, my body was so exhausted, it literally just shut down. And the muscles around my heart apparently cramped because of the exhaustion. And it gave the symptoms of a heart attack, but it obviously wasn't a heart attack. Well, after that, actually, he gave me some muscle relaxers and I went to sleep or whatever, and everything was fine. But the moral here is, what I realized was my body was smarter than I was. my body, I said, and I remember thinking about this. I said, well, wait a minute. If my body is smart enough to stop me from doing something that's hurting it, I need to listen to my body. I
Right.
need to learn to listen to my body. And ever since then, at the age of 18, I started working out, started taking better care of my health. And it's just been an amazing journey because I'm so committed to being healthy. But sometimes, it takes those traumatic experiences to get our attention before we will take care of our health. So that's kind of how I got into this whole physical fitness thing.
Mhm.
And I want to start off, Doc, first of all, is talking about the importance for Black men to simply have annual physicals.
Oh man, it's really important. And like what you say, unfortunately, you could have had a heart attack at that point and been maimed for the rest of your life. You know what I'm saying? It could have been something that you would not have completely recovered from. And I've seen that in 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds having a stroke, a heart attack from untreated hypertension, and they never knew their blood pressure was high because they hadn't been to the doctor to have anyone check their blood pressure. And so, it's so sad for so many of those people who can't just sort of kind of get a wake up call and then now I'm going to do right going forward. Now I'm paralyzed on the left hand side, in a wheelchair, and I never even got the heads up. You know what I'm saying? Because and why some of it's because no one they know was going to the doctor for an annual preventative visit, right? If your brother's not going to the doctor, your father's not going to the doctor, and your friends aren't going to the doctor, when the doctor's not on your landscape, right? And so that's how we as a community can say, you should go to the doctor every year. You should buy a blood pressure machine, and check your blood pressure at the kitchen table like I do, once every couple of weeks. You should know what your history is. If you have fathers with diabetes, you're at increased risk for diabetes. My father had diabetes. I'm at increased risk for diabetes. I don't have it yet. I got two brothers with diabetes, so I know I'm at increased risk. So I may look at a cupcake or something and think twice, you know what I'm saying, right? And so you want to not just protect your body, but also be aware of what things you can do to make us live longer, because some of that decreased life expectancy that we have is because we haven't done the preventative things, right? But men, we're famous for doing preventive things for our cars, for our homes. You got to check the water heater, you got to drain a little thing, you got to walk around, look at the gutters. We have all these responsibilities that we know if we don't change the oil in our car is not going to last, right? If you don't drive your gas till it's completely empty, because you might get some water in your car will be stopped. We know those things to preserve the things around us, but we don't do it to preserve the body that we're in, because we don't think about that way. And so I think that changing the mindset and having this discussion is a great opportunity.
Yeah, and again, so I want to start there for the listeners and the viewers. Make a commitment to yourself that you're going to get an annual physical. It's really that simple. Now, I hear guys, have all sorts of excuses why I can't go or why I won't go. So let's put the excuses aside, because
let me tell you this one. Let me jump in one quick excuse, right?
Okay.
I don't want a rectal exam, right? I don't want anyone sticking their finger up my butt. That's the way. And so I can say we don't do that anymore. Screening for prostate cancer with a blood test. So I just want to say there are people avoiding me because of that alone, right?
Yeah.
And we don't do that anymore. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that is definitely one of the excuses that I've heard men say why they won't go to the doctor. So the point here, though, gentlemen, is to make sure that and here's my belief. It's your responsibility to know your own body. And again, think of your body as a vehicle. And as a vehicle, think about it, you have a car. If something's wrong, that little check engine light will come on. And that vehicle is telling you something's wrong. You need to get it fixed. Well, your body's the same way. It gives us signals and tells us when something is wrong. So we have to learn how to listen to those signals. And we're going to talk about some of those in just a minute. But my point here, man, is that we have to be willing we must be willing to take responsibility for our physical health. And it is something that we alone are responsible for. And so with that being said, Doc, I want to kind of jump into the next portion, which is obviously we want to do the checkups, but another thing that's killing us is our diets.
Mm.
So let's talk a little bit about, because we love our soul food and we love to eat, but talk just a little bit about the importance of understanding the impact that your diet has on your health.
Right. Well, it has a huge impact, as you said, and I tell people to just think about what things need, right? So if you buy a plant, you buy a beautiful plant from the landscape store, right? Down the street, you go to Home Depot and you buy it's a beautiful plant. You bring it home and put it in the closet, but you water it in the closet, but it's not gonna do well in the closet. Why? Because plants need sun, right? You put it out in the sun, but you don't water it. Plants need water, right? Plants need fertilizer. That's what plants need. And so you put a plant in the closet, you don't wonder why it's well, right? So humans are on this earth, and humans are supposed to eat fruit, vegetables, nuts, beans, and then if we got lucky, we caught a fish, we killed a deer, whatever's out there, a raccoon or whatever it was, and we got protein through that. If we got lucky, you don't get lucky every day. But the staples of what human beings were supposed to eat is fruit, vegetables, nuts, beans. That's what's supposed to sustain us. That's what we were designed to do, right? So us skipping to all protein, which was not in the design at all, right? Just eating meat or meat and starch or something, and not having fruit and vegetables, nuts and beans as a major part of our diet, we're deviating. That's like putting a beautiful plant in the closet, or put the closet with the door cracked, right? So you got the door, you're not really acknowledging that they need sun, but you're not being tortured. It's in the closet, but the door is cracked open, so you can get a little bit of sun, right? And so that's what we're doing with our diet, because we're ignoring the human being aspect of what we are on this earth and what human beings need and how we were designed to best function, right? And that's why people who have like plant-based diets do very well, but they still get deficiencies from not eating meat. There's all sorts of discussion on whether humans should eat meat, right? But there's no discussion of whether humans should eat fruits and vegetables. Right? We're absolutely, there's no person that's deciding to just eat meat and that's living any length of time. And so our diet is critically important to our health, and a lot of our health problems drive from our poor diets.
Yeah. And again, it still amazes me how in 2024, most of us don't recognize the impact that our diets have until we're in this crisis situation and then trying to figure out how to fix it. And so we talked about food, but another thing I think that really impacts us is alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And sclerosis of the liver and all those types of things. So can you talk a little bit about the negative impact of alcohol? And again, there's nothing wrong with drinking per se, but tell us about the negative impact of alcohol on the body.
Well, I mean, alcohol is a depressant. It's something that brings people down. It's certainly addictive, and you've seen across the country the things that people will do in the name of alcohol. People commit crimes. People get the nerve to do all kinds of crazy things. There's domestic issues related to to alcohol. So those things can impact. I mean, there's data about certainly too much drinking can impact your liver, as you mentioned earlier, and then causing cirrhosis. It can cause heart problems. People that have, they call alcoholic cardiomyopathy, where they have a dilation of their heart and they can have a premature death from that. And so everyone who overdrinks doesn't get that, but some people can. And so alcohol can, most things in moderation, what I'm saying, are reasonable, but there's certainly dangers associated with alcohol and diseases associated with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So again,
one of the things actually to mention is that there are groups of Black men smoking cigars and drinking brandy. You know what I mean? I see in my Facebook, I'll see a big fat cigar laid across a good looking, glass with brandy in it, and it's almost like this is a high-end thing to do. You know what I'm saying? And that's what your high-end Black men are doing. They're smoking cigars and they're drinking. I don't know, it's not even brandy, it's probably scotch. I don't even know what it is, right? But it's expensive. You know, what they show the bottle in the background, and it's expensive. And so, but that's, you know, doing that is you're taking some years off of your life from the cigar. Cigars are no better than cigarettes. So the time it takes you to smoke a cigar, you're smoking a cigarette. How many cigarettes is that? That's a lot. You know, you smoke 2 cigars a day, you're smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, right? And you have all the baggage, all the health baggage that goes along with that, right? And if you're smoking, you're drinking the alcohol, that's also slowing your motivation, impacting kidney disease, you know, and the like. And so we're not trying to take away people's fun and whatnot, but if you know how to have fun in a way that can benefit your life, that can extend your life, versus having fun in a way that shortens your life, you know, the choice should be obvious.
Absolutely. And, you know, again, I think the key word, as you mentioned, was moderation.
Absolutely.
So for me personally, I haven't drank an alcoholic beverage in probably 30 years. And it was just a choice that I made. I just decided, you know, I don't need this. You know, I never had a drinking problem, but just I started when I used to be a personal trainer in a health club. So I've always taken care of myself physically. And I just decided, you know what? I don't have to have this to feel good. You know, I don't.
Right. Well, I mean, and just say the other side, I'll probably have an alcoholic drink tonight. You know, I mean, it's Friday, right?
Right.
And I think that we're not trying, you know, there's certainly the bad things associated with smoking are nowhere near the bad things associated with drinking alcohol from my humble perspective. You know, in terms of physicians, we spend a lot more time trying to get people to stop smoking anything, even vaping, than we spend time trying to get people to stop alcohol. The people we try to stop drinking alcohol are the ones that are in DTs, and you know, it's obvious they can't handle alcohol. They come smelling of alcohol in the middle of the morning, right?
Wow.
It's you know, it's great. There are people who can't drink alcohol, usually figure that out early in life, right? And they stop, right? And there's other people, like you say, who just decide, I don't need this. It doesn't do anything for me. And you know, so there is a wide range, but when it's affecting your health is when like you said, if it's not done in moderation, that's when it's a problem. There's no moderation for cigars or cigarettes. You should not smoke. There's danger associated with, you know, having a cigar once a year is dangerous. So you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But there's no moderation with cigars, but there is moderation, I think, with alcohol, with marijuana, with, you know, and I'm not trying to encourage people to do it, but there are people that can do things in moderation and lead very fulfilling lives.
Absolutely. And once again, I'm not saying you have to stop drinking alcohol. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, first of all, if you'll do your annual checkup, you'll find out if there are any negative ramifications of your drinking. So that's why the annual checkup is so important. But again, moderation is the key. So as you're thinking about this, just remember, moderation is the key. So, Doc, now I want you to talk a little bit about blood pressure. Because again, I mentioned earlier that our body is like a vehicle and it sends us signals and tells us when something's wrong. Well, high blood pressure is one of those signals. So can you kind of explain what that signal is telling us?
Yeah, well, you know, your blood pressure is the pressure of your blood against the walls of your vessels in your body, right? And the walls of the vessels are meant to sustain a certain pressure. And so I use the analogy of a garden hose, right? So I have a cousin who buys a garden hose, screws it on the thing, turns it on, and has this, you know, little sprayer at the end, and he leaves his garden hose on the whole time, right? When I pull my garden hose off, I unroll it, I turn the water on, right? And then I use my garden hose. I'm in the 20th year of my garden hose. He's on his 6th garden hose. You know what I'm saying? Because he turns it on the pressure. The garden hose aren't meant to sustain high pressure for a prolonged period of time. They start to leak, they start to crack, and then they break. And so we're meant to tolerate, as humans, 120/80, you know, our normal blood pressure. And our vessels can tolerate that something for 125 years, right? That's how long humans could live, 125 years at that level. But when you have a blood pressure of 160 over 110, 180 over 105, like I see all the time, your blood vessels weren't made to sustain that pressure for a long period of time. Now, it was made to sustain in a short period of time. If a lion ran in this room or ran into your room, we need a high blood pressure so we can run and get the hell out the room, right? We need pressure to get that pressure to our muscles so that we can get out of here and not get killed by this lion. So we can tolerate high blood pressures temporarily, but not while we're asleep, not while we're sitting watching TV. We got this 180 over 110, and there are too many Black men sitting around with blood pressures like that. And so eventually what happens, the vessel breaks, the hose breaks. And so if it breaks in the brain, that's a stroke. If it breaks in the heart, it's a heart attack. If it kills your kidney cells, that's where the kidney failure came from, because your kidney wasn't made to sustain these high pressures, and the kidneys is what filters the blood, of toxins. And so if that filter stuff's coming at the filter too hard, the filter will break, and that's kidney failure. And so having a normal blood pressure is key. And then you have small vessels in your brain, your kidney, your heart. You also have small vessels in your penis, right? And so you're breaking those small vessels down. And so people will say, now I have erection problems, and the blood pressure medicine is causing me to have erection problems. No, your untreated high blood pressure is causing microvascular damage. Little vessels are getting damaged in your penis, and that's why you're having trouble with erection problems. It's not like a quote unquote normal part of aging. It's a normal part of damaging the vessels, right? And so I always, whenever I'm trying, your pressure's high, I'm gonna put you on medicine. Well, what's it gonna do to Mr. Johnson? Well, Mr. Johnson's been damaged already. You know what I'm saying? By your super high blood pressure. I'm just trying to bring your pressure down to prevent any further damage. And so it's real important, people. You should know what your blood pressure is. You should have a machine at $35 at Target, Walmart. Omron makes a good thing. I don't have any connection to them. And know what your blood pressure is. It should generally be less than 140 over less than 90.
Nice. Now, another signal that our body sends us when there's a problem is high cholesterol levels. So can you talk a little bit about what that means and what that is?
Right. So high cholesterol levels are like the calcium deposits in your water pipes in your house. If you've ever cut those open, the cholesterol lines on the inside of your vessels. And so that again makes the lumen, the inside of your vessel, smaller. And that also raises up your blood pressure. So high cholesterol can frequently be linked to high blood pressure. And also, as those things get smaller, they become more fragile, and that causes heart attacks and strokes in your brain. And so again, go into that preventative visit to see your primary care doctor. We're going to draw blood, see what your cholesterol levels are, and if it's high, advise you to, adjust your diet. My brother worked at a factory, and there was a McDonald's next door, and he got a Whopper, and not a Whopper. He got a quarter pounder and a regular hamburger every day, and French fries. And cholesterol was ridiculously high, and he stopped that. And his cholesterol level went down 100 points.
Wow!
Because that was just that's what he ate for lunch every day: hamburger and French fries. Hamburger and French fries every day. And there's a lot of men I see in my practice that do that: hamburger and French fries. Go to Mr. Hero. Go to Burger King. You're not supposed to eat that every day. Thinking about the fruits and nuts and beans, none of that's in hamburger and French fries. Potatoes, I'm not even sure humans are supposed to be eating potatoes. If they had to dig potato, you have to dig a potato up, right? I mean, so it's like we're supposed to eat the stuff that comes out of the ground. We ain't supposed to be digging in the ground for stuff. So it's if that's what you're doing, you can bring your cholesterol down with bring a salad, bring a lunch. You'll save money. Think about fruits and vegetables. Your diet will adjust. Your bodies will adjust to the new diet, and you won't be, kind of feigning for hamburgers and French fries.
So cholesterol is primarily driven by what we eat?
Primarily for most people, but there's also people that inherit a high cholesterol. And so you mentioned, my podcast, Better Black Health. I interviewed a 29-year-old who had a heart attack probably he was running, being healthy. He's outside running. He's not even 30. Had a heart attack, passed out, didn't know what was going on, went to the hospital. His cholesterol was silly high, really high, and he never knew. And after he got that treated, now he's an ambassador for American Heart Association, and you know what I mean. So it's like it's a great story to hear, but it's important to know that if you don't have your cholesterol checked, you don't know if it's high, and you could have a heart attack. There's people that have heart attacks in their 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s from something they inherited. But then you look, you see, oh man, Uncle Dave died when he was in his 30s. Miss so-and-so died. You know, these relatives dying prematurely, which anything below 65 or 70 is premature, could be related to these high cholesterol that's inherited. And then you can't change your diet enough to lower this cholesterol. You're going to need to go on a medicine, a statin, you know, a torvastatin or something like that.
Gotcha. And so with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the impact of being overweight.
Well, obesity, which is what overweight, it's strange to me. We know the impact in terms of, increased blood pressure, not healthy, people walking around sweating, and there's no reason to be sweating, right? So we know those things, but a lot of people don't know that it's associated with increased risk for cancers, obesity in women, increased breast cancer, increased colon cancer, increased prostate cancer, because it hasn't been fully fleshed out why, but they sometimes think that fat is feeding the cancers, right, in the areas. And so there's definitely widespread increased cancers associated with just being overweight, like what you talked about, on top of the things that intuitively we already know, which is, you're going to have higher blood pressure, you probably have a higher cholesterol because you're not eating the right things, you're not exercising, your heart is probably not in the best shape. And so there's a lot of things bad associated with being overweight. And, as a community, we tend to sort of, I don't know, embrace people being overweight. I mean, certainly women, we love a big, shapely woman, who doesn't, right? But those people many of those people might be classified as obese, I mean, by their providers, when we might say, man, she's banging, right? And in men, I interviewed another lady who specializes in weight loss, was saying that, that he's like, I'm not trying to be a punk, you know what I mean? So I'm a big guy and I like being big, and people get out of my way when I go in the bars or the clubs or something, and I like my weight, and you might be 320 pounds, right? 6'1", 320 pounds. Not a healthy weight for 6'1". I'm 6'1", 200 pounds, 6'1", 320 pounds. That's a lot, right? And I'm even over, so, but people like that, and they eat to maintain that because it gives them some cultural advantage, but it doesn't give you a health advantage. And one last point, I say, you think about the people that over 70, how many of them are fat? I mean, the people that are alive and over 70, if they're obese, if they're fat, they're sitting around and they're on their last leg probably. You know what I mean? They're not thriving over 70. So you have that's when we get to 70, we want to be, you're at the home stretch, but you can make that home stretch much longer by being closer to a normal weight.
Gotcha. Now, another thing I want to talk about, which I'm really interested in, is this whole idea of inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is, as we get older, the body aches and, the basic stuff is they correlate that with inflammation. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, inflammation is kind of behind a lot of things that we've already talked about. I mean, they were saying that some of that inflammation that we talked about, people overweight, that the fat cells feed inflammation, and so that there's more, but inflammation is why my back hurts right now, or it's why why sometimes you can have a heart attack in your vessels because your vessels become inflamed. When you cut yourself and you have an infection, that redness and warmth is all inflammation. And so, and there's data that even shows just oppression, being oppressed from racism, for example, can cause you to have an increased inflammation. And there's blood tests that we draw that can measure the inflammation in your body, your SED rate, they call it sedimentation rate, or it's just C-reactive protein. All these things kind of measure inflammation, and we, in a roundabout way, say, well, something's going on. They've got rheumatoid arthritis. They've got some sort of process, because we see these markers of increased inflammation. And so and getting those inflammation things, getting that down, not having inflammation is preferred, right? And they also think that your diet, we talked about earlier, can cause increase. You can eat things that will cause increased inflammation in your body. And so it's definitely wasn't talked about 20 years ago, in my practice, but now inflammation is really seen to be a critical part of why, a lot of the diseases that we see today.
Yeah. And the last issue I want to talk about, and you kind of alluded to it just a little bit, but it's prostate. Mm-hmm. And prostate cancers. And my understanding is, Black men probably have the highest rates of prostate cancer in the country, I've read. Can you talk to us a little bit about, number one, what the hell is the prostate?
Right.
And what causes it to enlarge and give us all this grief? Tell us about that.
Well, your prostate is a little organ the size of a Super Bowl. I don't know if so I'm at the age when we were little, we had little Super Balls. We'd bounce them and they'd go way up in the air. And it's this consistency of a Super Ball. And it's between our bladder, where we store our urine, and the base of our penis, but when we're urinating out. And so for whatever reason that I'm not going to go into now, that is what our urine travels through to go out. As it enlarges outward, it also enlarges inward, and then people have trouble with not being able to pass their urine in a fluid way. And so the prostate you can develop prostate cancer, and Black men for sure, even including Alaskan natives and Native Americans, Black men have the highest prostate cancer rate in the country. Now, one of the issues related to prostate cancer is zinc, and so African Americans men tend to be zinc deficient, and so vitamin D deficiency is associated with increased prostate cancer. And then there's also calcium. Taking calcium from the drinking milk, getting dairy, increases your risk of prostate problems and prostate cancer, which a lot of Black men don't know. And so, most of us are lactose intolerant and we don't drink a lot of milk, but some of us do. I have friends that do, and I have a friend who drank milk and he got prostate cancer. And I didn't know that calcium was associated, because they don't advertise these things because they're nuanced. Calcium in white men may not cause prostate cancer, or Asian men, right? And so I think it's important that we may be doing something, back to your diet again, with our diet that's not necessarily natural, that may be throwing off our balance. But I know people with a low zinc level is associated with people with a higher risk for prostate cancer. So I always make sure I take some extra zinc. And then people with low vitamin D, which almost all African Americans in America have, also associated with increased risk. So who knows if that's the reason, quote unquote, if there's one specific reason why we get the disproportionate amount of prostate cancer, but those are definitely contributors to that.
Which is the perfect lead in to this conversation. So you talked about zinc and other vitamins. Let's talk about the importance of making sure we have the right amount of vitamins. And I found it interesting that as a doctor, you created a multivitamin, specifically for African American men and women, by the way. Yeah. But I'm curious, what drove you to do that? I mean, because I guess part of me says, well, wait a minute, are the vitamins acting differently in Black men? And so tell us a little bit about your thinking behind and wanting to create this.
Yeah, well, I wrote a book that's for doctors and nurse practitioners, for clinicians, to help them with the clinical care of African Americans, because no one had ever done that. So I wrote the first book on the clinical care of African Americans. And when I was doing the chapter on lab results, I found, you know, I was looking, just combing through, just trying to make the book complete. You know, there's a book on chapter on cancer, chapter on heart disease, chapter on prostate stuff. And I didn't want to lab results. And I saw, wow, we've got all this widespread vitamin D deficiency, which I knew about, but I didn't know about zinc deficiency and magnesium deficiency and potassium deficiency that these population studies have shown that we have. And I'd have a patient would say they had chest pain like you or something, and they'd go to ER, like you mentioned earlier, and they say, well, what happened? Oh, they gave me some potassium. You know, they weren't having a heart attack. They just needed potassium, right? And when I was doing that chapter, I said, man, there's data that shows African Americans, we generally do need more potassium. We do need more zinc. We do need more vitamin D, and you can't get it even with a really good diet. You know, I mean, if you look at what's high in zinc, we may eat that occasionally, but we don't eat that every day. You know, mushrooms and salmon, and people just don't have the budget to do that, right? And so as I was finishing that chapter, I thought I could do a supplement that would include the things that it should be in there, and also excellent, leave calcium out, leave vitamin E, which has been associated with increased risk for lung cancer and prostate cancer, leave selenium out, which has also been associated with increased risk for prostate cancer. And so you could take a multivitamin that would give you the benefits that you need at the dose, and then leave out the stuff that you don't need, because people just think it's a vitamin, to supplement more is better. So I'm supposed to take one, I'll take two. But there's a sweet spot for everything. Like when you make a cake and it calls for 2 eggs, you don't put 3 eggs in. 3 eggs will ruin the cake. You're supposed to put 2 eggs in, right? And so there's a specific amount of stuff that we're supposed to have. So using regular multivitamins, for example, the white American male needs 600 international units of vitamin D a day to stay vitamin D sufficient. African American males need 2,000. Wow. So when you read the bottle and it says whatever brand you're reading, it says 100% of the vitamin D you need. That's 100% of the vitamin D a white man needs. If you're a white man, you're good. If you're a black man, you would need to take 3.5 of those in order to get the vitamin D. And that's why, and we all kind of knew that non-intuitively, because if you go to the vitamin store, the people got a multivitamin, they got a vitamin C, they got a vitamin D, they got a zinc, they got a potassium. And because there's nothing out there until I did this that has all that at the right dose. You know, for the men over 50 like I am, it's got 25 milligrams of zinc. It's got enough vitamin C. It's got 2,000 of vitamin D. It's got everything you need. So you don't have to go and buy all these different supplements, at least black men. And I did it because I'm a black man. So that's why I did it first. You know what I'm saying? And also the same thing for women. And so it's just the only thing out there. It's not, when people say, well, you got a black-owned multivitamin, black-owned is the least of it. This has been tailored based on research outcomes to best support African-American health. And no other multivitamin. I'm looking forward to other multivitamins doing it, right? Following suit, and I'll be honored. I'm not going to be mad, right? But because our needs are not specifically being addressed in the supplement area. And there's a long story related to why that I won't go into now. But we do have, just like things run in the family, diabetes runs in my family. There are things that run in African-American family. Just think of us as a family. You know what I mean? And we need more vitamin D. We need more zinc.
Well, again, I really appreciate having the conversation with you about that, because, like I said, I've been taking your vitamins based on your recommendation and your area of expertise, and I just intuitively get a good feeling that, number one, I know where your heart is, what you're wanting to do for us. And again, I appreciate that. But I think that's something that as Black men, we have to be aware of, because if we're talking about health, we need to understand the importance of the right amount of the different vitamins. And like you said, it's important to understand that.
And I say, don't buy my vitamin, but look at the label and get 2,000 of vitamin D3, right? Get 15 or 20 of zinc. Get 500 of vitamin C, unless you're really eating fruit like you're supposed to. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have to buy mine, but at least get what research says we should get every day.
Yeah. And again, it's really about preventative maintenance. I guess that's a good way to look at it. Taking care of our body just like you take care of your car. You know, these vitamins are going to be preventative maintenance to provide your body with the minerals and vitamins it needs to run efficiently and effectively. So, as we wind down, though, I want to talk about the last piece, which is exercise. And I know that as Black men, unfortunately, as I mentioned at the beginning, you see us on TV dominating sports, and yet at the same time, most of us won't exercise. So just briefly, can you kind of just give us some insights on the benefits of exercise?
Well, again, I mean, when you think about what humans are supposed to be doing, we're supposed to be out in the world, I mean, picking the vegetables and fruit, I mean, walking through those things. Exercise is the cure for almost everything. I mean, even people with arthritis, the more they move, the better they do, right? People with emphysema, the more they walk, the further they can walk. And so there's no instance in health. I mean, people use their health as an excuse to me for not exercising, right? They'll say, my ankles are swelling, my knees hurt, my back hurts, and you shouldn't use your health as an excuse to not exercise. You should use your health as a reason to exercise, no matter how it is. So when people come to me, too many people come to me wanting a handicap placard, right? I got to write a prescription for a handicap placard. And if I get in an argument with a patient, it's about a handicap placard, because I say, you need to park in the back of the parking lot and walk all that way to the store, and then don't get on that little cart and ride around. You need to walk up and down every aisle in that store, right? And so and there's very few people that need a handicap placard. You know what I'm saying? Because most of those people would benefit from parking further away and walking in. And unfortunately, it's always the biggest people that do that. Now, of course, if you just had a hip replacement or you got end-stage cancer and you're not going to live, then yeah, park in the handicap spot. I'm happy to have you do that. And I do give those out. But anyone who's trying to lead a productive life, whatever that means to you, if you're trying to lead a productive life, you really aren't helping anybody. And then, what does God do when he looks down and sees you hop out of the car and running and some handicapped person driving behind you, and there's all those spots are gone? I mean, that you don't want to tempt the fact that they may make, okay, you want to be handicapped? I'll make you handicapped, right? I'll make you need that spot, because it's not good. So exercise is probably an extreme example, but exercise is important. You try to get it, if you get it in the course of what you're doing, in the course of going shopping, in the course of going to work, you don't have to set out an hour to get on the treadmill or whatnot, because you got your steps, doing that.
Yeah. And again, it's, for me, as I think about exercise, people think, oh, I got to go to the gym, I got to lift weight, no, exercise is really about moving the body. The body is designed to move. It's designed to move. So you got to move it. And walking can be just as effective as anything else when it comes to exercise, because you're basically working all your muscle groups. You're doing your aerobic exercise, meaning you're getting your air, breathing, and so forth. So don't make excuses. Do something. You got to move that body, because that's the way it was designed. So Doc, as we wind down now, just kind of in summary for the viewers, first of all, get that checkup. You gotta start there, because getting the checkup tells you what you need to do next. If there's some areas that you need to focus on, it'll tell you. So do that. And then, of course, think about those basic check lights that come on, like high blood pressure, cholesterol levels, your weight. Think about those things and pay attention to those things. And know that it is my belief that the human body is the greatest creation on this planet. I believe it is absolutely perfect. And it is our responsibility to take good care of it. And so as Black men, it is our responsibility to do a better job of taking care of our health. So Doc, I want to give you an opportunity now for your final closing thoughts, whatever's on your mind to share.
Oh, no, listen, it's been a great opportunity to talk to you. It's been a great conversation. Again, my podcast, Better Black Health with Dr. Greg Hall. Happy to have you join there. If you go to sequencemultivitamins.com, you can find the genetic sequence multivitamins we were just talking about. They're also available on Amazon. If you want to go on Amazon, some people like buying on Amazon. You can get there. You can get subscribe and save and all that. You can follow me at Dr. Greg Hall 01 on Instagram and all these places. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, it has been my absolute joy having you on the show. And I do want to close with this, Doc, because this, I mentioned earlier that I'm an optimist. My intention, I'm setting an intention. I want to live to be at least 100 years old. It's a goal. I want to hit 3 digits. That's just for me.
Mm-hmm.
As I look at some of the advances we're making in science and genetics and sequencing and all this cool stuff that's happening with AI, again, it fuels my optimism that I honestly believe I could get to 120.
Right.
I really believe I could get there. But right now, my goal is simply to get to 3 digits. I want to live to say that I got to be 100 years old. That's just my goal. So again, Doc, thank you for spending an hour with us here on Shatter the Stereotypes. And for the viewers, always remember, it is absolutely possible for you to create an extraordinary life, but you got to be willing to put forth extraordinary effort. We'll see you next episode. Take care.